Have you ever wondered about the story behind that letter in your mailbox? Well, get ready for a journey back in time to explore the history of the US Post Office. It's a story filled with, well, letters, and a lot of waiting. Let's rewind all the way back to the early days of the United States. Imagine a world without email, without texts, without even a telephone. If you wanted to send a message to someone far away, you had to write a letter. And then you had to find someone, anyone, willing to carry it for you. It was slow, unreliable, and basically a game of chance. You'd hand your letter to a traveler heading in the right direction and just hope for the best. Weeks, maybe even months, could pass before it reached its destination, if it ever did. The founding fathers looked at this system and thought, we can probably do a little better than this. They realized that for a new nation to thrive, people needed a reliable way to communicate, to conduct business, and to stay connected across vast distances. So, in 1775, even before the Declaration of Independence was signed, the Second Continental Congress made a pivotal decision. They established the United States Post Office Department, and who did they put in charge? None other than the brilliant inventor, statesman, and all-around genius, Benjamin Franklin. He became the very first Postmaster General. Now, you might be picturing Franklin zapping kites with keys or inventing bifocals, but his role here was a bit more administrative. His main job was to map out postal routes, essentially drawing lines on a map to connect major towns and cities. He standardized delivery costs and worked to make the system more efficient. It wasn't exactly thrilling work, but it was absolutely essential. Franklin laid the groundwork for a network that would eventually crisscross the entire continent. In those early days, the real heroes of the Postal Service were the post riders. These were hardy individuals on horseback, tasked with carrying bags of mail from one town to the next. It was a tough, lonely job. They faced treacherous weather, difficult terrain, and long, monotonous hours in the saddle. The horse would plod along, step by step, for miles on end. Sometimes the rider would stop for a rest, or the horse would get tired. Delays were just a normal part of life. A letter arriving a few weeks late wasn't a scandal. It was just how things worked. The system was slow, but it was a system, and that was a huge improvement over what existed before. People could now send and receive news, business correspondence, and personal messages with a newfound sense of confidence. As the nation grew, so did the Postal Service. Small, dedicated buildings started popping up in towns and cities. These were the first post offices. Don't imagine grand, ornate structures. Most were simple, functional buildings, often just a single room. They were usually square, built with wood or brick, with a door for people to enter and a window or two to let in some light. Inside, a postmaster or clerk would sit behind a counter, waiting. Their days were often quiet, punctuated by the occasional arrival of a mail rider or a local resident coming to send a letter or check if they had any mail. There were no long lines, no automated sorting machines, just a quiet space dedicated to connecting people. For the first few decades, sending a letter was a bit complicated. The recipient, not the sender, usually had to pay for the postage upon delivery. The cost was based on the number of sheets of paper and the distance the letter had to travel. This could be expensive and inconvenient. Imagine getting a letter and having to scramble for coins just to read it. This all changed in the 1840s with a revolutionary invention, the adhesive postage stamp. The first U.S. postage stamps were issued in 1847, featuring portraits of, you guessed it, Benjamin Franklin and George Washington. Now, senders could prepay for postage by simply buying a stamp and sticking it on the envelope. And how did they stick them? Well, they were gummed on the back, so people had to lick them. It was a simple, practical solution that made the entire process much smoother and more accessible for everyone. The 19th century was a period of incredible expansion for the United States, and the post office had to keep up. The famous Pony Express, though it only lasted for about 18 months, captured the public's imagination with its daring riders racing across the West. But the real game changers were the railroads. Trains could carry massive amounts of mail far more quickly and reliably than any horse ever could. Special railway post office cars were designed where clerks would actually sort the mail while the train was in motion. This was a huge leap in efficiency. It meant a letter mailed in New York could be sorted on its way to Chicago and be ready for delivery almost as soon as it arrived. The age of the mail train had begun, dramatically speeding up communication across the growing nation. Then came the 20th century, and with it, another technological marvel, the automobile. Trucks started replacing horse-drawn wagons for local mail delivery in cities and towns. This allowed for more frequent and flexible delivery routes. But the innovation didn't stop there. In 1918, the post office experimented with a bold new idea: airmail. The first scheduled airmail flights began between Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City. Early mail planes were small and unreliable, and pilots were true daredevils, flying in open cockpits and navigating by sight. But the potential was undeniable. A letter could now cross the country in a matter of days, not weeks. Airplanes quickly became a crucial part of the postal infrastructure, shrinking the continent and the world. Even with all these advancements in transportation from horse to train to truck to plane, the core product remained the same. Paper. For centuries, the mail consisted of physical letters, documents, and newspapers. Post office clerks still sorted letters by hand, placing them into cubbies and bags for delivery. Mail carriers still walked their routes, delivering everything from personal correspondence to business invoices. The daily routine of the post office remained remarkably consistent. It would open its doors in the morning, serve customers throughout the day, and close in the afternoon. The mail would be collected, sorted, and sent on its way. It was a steady, predictable rhythm that became a familiar part of American life. And that brings us to today. The United States Postal Service, or USPS as we now know it, continues its mission. In an age of instant digital communication, the role of physical mail has certainly changed. While we send fewer personal letters, the USPS is still incredibly busy. It delivers millions of packages from online shopping, crucial bills and statements, and yes, a whole lot of advertisements and flyers that many of us might call junk mail. Mail carriers are still a daily presence in our neighborhoods, and post offices remain community hubs. The fundamental process hasn't changed all that much. Mail is collected, sorted, and delivered. The doors open in the morning and they close in the afternoon. It's a reliable, everyday service that we often take for granted. So, the next time you open your mailbox, take a moment to think about the long and steady history behind that piece of mail. It's a story not of thrilling drama or shocking twists, but of quiet dedication and constant evolution. It's the story of a system built by people like Benjamin Franklin, carried by countless riders and drivers, and sorted by generations of clerks, all to ensure that a simple message could get from one person to another. And that is the surprisingly straightforward history of the US Post Office. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey through time, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more videos. See you next time.